bit different now that I've actually sat down. Don't know.
You ready? You ready for it?
Yeah, basically.
Oh man.
Do you want to just start by telling us who you are?
Yeah. My name's Thomas Jack Brown. I'm a video installation artist and video artist, based in the Black Country, but I've been educated and worked kind of all across the United Kingdom. I recently graduated from the University of Worcester with a creative masters in creative media, and then this is my second installation work after graduating in November. The first one was a commission from the Archers in Worcester to produce a video installation piece for their first ever festival this year, called Light Night, and then I've just completed, or about to complete I should say, as this is my final week, about to complete the month-long residency at the Asylum. We're currently sitting in the studios right now on the subject of heterotopias, for which I created a multi-projector digital projection of Wolverhampton using archive footage and my own recordings.
So, when you like just the name of the project, remind me, dystopia.
So the residency is heterotopias. It's a 6 month, but I titled my final piece Wolverhamptopia because as I said, I think I said this to Hannah. I'm a sucker for portmanteaus, and I have the comedic range of a middle-aged man.
Well, what does the word heterotopia mean to you? So, like, because the ad went out online, you obviously saw it, you responded to it. Yeah. So, what was it about the word heterotopia and the project that really drew?
Those kind of considerations were second place to me. The locality of the residency was the big draw for me. Being able to create something in the Midlands, which I think has seen in the last 10-15 years quite a decline in art outside of, say, the Birmingham area. So for example, we've lost spaces like the Public Gallery in West Brom. That's now become, I think, a college, and we've lost loads of other little places as well due to financial reasons, but locality was the main reason. The big draw of heterotopia to me was found when I was doing the research. So I researched into the principles that the writer had kind of written about in some of the essays and some of the lecture notes that he did in the 60s. And I focused down on, I focused down on the fourth principle, which was about heterotopias of time. And with what I was studying in my master's, which is to do with memory, I thought those two were kind of interconnected in the sense that if you, the collective you, not an individual you, but if one were to visit a space they had not existed in for a while, or they had not visited in years and seen all the changes and seen also what had remained, that in itself I think could create a heterotopia, in the sense of the environment in which you're existing is strange but also familiar. So for example, I'm hopefully, depending on holidays and everything, I'm hoping to go back to Canterbury in October, which is where I did my undergraduate degree. There will be features within Canterbury that are still familiar to me: the cathedral, the Roman baths, the high street. There will still be things, but there will be individual things that have changed. So that clash of things that evolve and change creates that strange and familiar setting. And that's what kind of drew me towards, upon reading, I was like, okay, this is what I need to go within on the research, and this is what I kind of need to go with to create my work. And I think that lends itself to video, because video is a time capturing mechanic. You capture time with video, you manipulate time with editing, and you contract, you either compress or pull out, and you extend time, and you construct time with video formatting processes.
That's an interesting way to view it. Because this is like the conversation we were having when I was photographing you around as you were videoing. It was all based around like the very concept of what video actually is. Like we create uses for it. So it's marketing, it's family memories, as you say. It is a time capsule. It's things that if we don't keep, that's gone forever. to memory.
Yeah.
So you going around the archive was quite interesting, seeing all those old family videos, and everything else that you found in there. So it's interesting when we were talking about the fact that what happened, like how long should you, like just the concept of like what happens if you lose any of the footage and that, and the meaning behind that, it's all really interesting. So I guess because the book, it was based on a book, wasn't it? Heterotopia.
So it was from a set of lecture notes that the writer Foucault. I'm terrible with French pronunciation. I mean, I'm going to France in July, so I need to brush up.
You don't.
I feel like I do. I feel like I do. When I went to Toulouse a couple of years ago with the missus, and I kind of bundled my way through it. Foucault wrote this lecture in the 60s to a series, I believe it was to a series of architects and urban planners, about these spaces. There are, I think, I was speaking from David on Saturday, because I focused specifically on one of the principles. David said there were 6 pillars, and I can't name them all off the top of my head, but I remember certainly there are spaces like heterotopias of crisis, heterotopia of time, which is heterochronia. Those are the 2 that I remember certainly off the top of my head. And then these lecture notes, these lecture series were translated and put into I think it's called Architecture Movement Continue. I'm godly translating that from French into a magazine in the 80s, just before he died. So yeah, it's from the theories and everything is from the 60s, translated and put into a magazine in the 80s. But it's interesting because apparently the writer did only use this phrase for a very short period in the 60s, but from reading some other articles, Western culture in the 90s, certainly within certain movements like art, just latched onto it, and we've gone wild with this idea of these strange yet unfamiliar places. And I think this is, David was having this issue. The more and more he was reading about it, the more and more he was seeing that anything could be considered a heterotopic space. But another writer, I think his name was Saldanar, or Aaron Saldanar, was saying that if you do that, if everything is heterotopic, then surely nothing is heterotopic. You can't. It was quite interesting. With some
Sounds like a very subjective definition of it, really. Because
I think you have to be.
Yeah,
I think you have to be.
Like most things in the creative field, everyone's going to have their own opinion and identify in a different way.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how things such as oppositional and mirrored and agreed reading of texts happen. And I think certainly with heterochronic spaces, when we were walking around when I was filming, if you were to take someone who has, say if we took a first year student from the university or one of the first year students from the colleges, and we paired them up with someone of, say they're in their 60s or their 70s, have lived here all their life. For example, one of the people that I interviewed, Rob Maris, for this video piece, say if we paired those people up and we walked with them around the city, their experiences and their memories and their individual relationships with the city will differ. Therefore, their experiences of the city will differ because one has been informed a lot more than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at its very core, heterotopia is just a response to space, environment, and your place within that space.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So, I actually really liked your exhibition.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of video anyway, but it was because I knew I'd seen the collage work you'd done before, but the overlap you did with the 3 projectors, I thought it looked I thought it was just going to be one video, and then it was just going to like the kaleidoscope effect. Yeah. But having the 3 and that overlap, I thought that made it more impactful. Really, it's quite cool. Really nice setup as well.
Thank you.
So overall, how have you found it? You're happy with? I know I asked you on the night, but now that you've had time to reflect, are you happy with?
Yeah. I mean, if I may just touch back on what I was saying about experiences of Wolverhampton, my kind of interaction with the city kind of is limited to my teenage years. Prior to coming here and spending a lot of time for this residency and filming and editing and working within Wolverhampton as a space, a lot of my time was dedicated in my youth to coming to Wolverhampton to see live music. I believed when I was a lot younger, and again, it's the city changing and the scale moving, and what is permanent and what is fixed and what is not. I spent a lot of my youth in the Civic, seeing different bands. So in Wolverhampton, I was lucky enough to see American band Modest Mouse when they had Johnny Marr as a guitarist. I saw Idlewild. I've seen Idlewild about a dozen different times over the course of my life. But I saw Idlewild. They had a support act called Now It's Overhead, and this band was just incredible when they were on. And I've always thought that Wolverhampton's better for music than Birmingham. I really believe that. Slade Rooms as well, so Frightened Rabbit before the very sad news of Scott Hutchinson a year or so ago. And so I really wasn't sure what the art scene was. I knew what the music thing was, but I really wasn't sure what the art thing was. So to have an exhibition where you're not sure how many people came, now whether that's the kind of spinning in and out of the night, or I'm not really counting, but to have it felt like 50-60 people in a 3-hour window, I thought that was really nice. Nice is a glib word, but it was humbling. I had some really lovely conversations with some really lovely people, and I think it spiraled people on to kind of go further with their own investigation into their own background. So I was speaking to a woman whose parents were part of the Windrush generation, and she was asking me, how did you get the archive footage for your exhibition, for your piece? And she was curious about how do you go about it within the Wolverhampton archives. And I think if ultimately if art or a creative piece has that ripple effect, I think it's done its job. If that woman is inspired to go on to use the archives, that's a positive effect, to go on and have a look again and see if she can find. She was looking for video of her parents who, I believe she said they were protesting in the 70s or involved in some kind of marches. I'm not up on my history involved in that period of the United Kingdom, but for her to go and actively seek and look for these video sources, because she said her parents were on the news, that is a positive thing, to use something in the city which in itself is a heterochronic space, because it's an archive, it's a collection of time. We have videos and documents of things that have existed and continue to exist outside of the decay of time, as time does decay.
One of the most interesting things about the possibilities of social media, as I was saying, was the fact that it's gone from us being almost at the mercy of the corporations to now, because people can just make money online just by being themselves, and like people who are more open tend to get more following. Now we're moving into a world where people have more control over the content that goes out, the products they buy, and just the conversation as far as how we respond to things, how we then agree what's right and wrong. It's almost like it's almost like one organism learning together in a way.
I would say yes, but I do agree. I think again there is that kind of still that sense of democracy, or that feeling of having a democratic playing level where one has the ability to have that control. But I think if we looked at the social media platforms where potentially the distribution of content is its most prevalent, it feels like it has to be in that format. So if you want to share it, it has to be within Facebook's format. If you want to share it, it has to be within Instagram's format. And I think you could insert the argument in terms of kind of internet safety and the rules, and that's absolutely fine. You're working to the rules set down by policy, by companies. I can live with that. It's don't be a dick and share awful content. I think is part of it, but I also think some of that has been kind of shrunk in a way. So, for example, from a purely aesthetic point of view, I mean, I bloody love MySpace. I absolutely loved MySpace. Again, there was the rose-tinted spectacles of having MySpace as a kid, but it was more the fact that you had the ability to code it.
You could code.
You could code your MySpace page and change how it looked. So it meant that your page looked completely different to how everyone else's looked.
That's pretty early for the people to be doing coding and stuff. Like, wow.
Yeah, there is that element of coding. So it's like parts.
Maybe that's why it crashed though, because Facebook was just simplified to the extreme.
I would say it's again. I think it could be the power shift between what is cool, and what is relevant, and who is using it, and it's that migration of
and who can put content in front of you easily.
It's that migration of audiences and moving from one to the other. Facebook started off as this thing where only a select few United States colleges could use it. If you've shut the door to something that only a certain few could use, you want it.
Yeah.
You want that thing in your hand to be able to use it.
Yeah, definitely. It's like prohibition. If you're ever told not to do something, people are always going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you know how to.
With speakeasies and the alcohol production and things like that, absolutely. But I think, I think there was that brilliance of being able to code your page and have it look how you want, to the point where, it's God, you just have music in the background, and if you had headphones on, it'd just be ridiculous. You just blurt out like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance, and but I do think we've lost some of that, because when we share it's within the Facebook format, it's within the Instagram format, it's, God forbid, it's within the TikTok format. Showing my age there, kind of too old for that. I think when we've. I mean, from an artistic point of view, I think we could have lost some of that. I say this sitting here now on this day at this time, but who knows when? I say when, not if. Who knows when the next big social media platform that could take over Facebook and go, right, okay, the user numbers are dwindling, and I think
that would be interesting to see if anything would take over Facebook. Do you know, actually, I think, when was it? Since Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
Because I was looking into Google My Business and looking at statistics and such for my own thing, but Facebook has actually, since Analytica, it took a huge dip in the amount of people that actually bother using it now. Yeah. Because it's that fact of data. People I think the world's starting to realise that everything you do is data, and that has value to someone. You buy data online from people who have collected it from other things. It has value to people who can then profit from your activities.
Yeah. If I go back to a John Oliver piece again, and this was about spiraling debt crisis. So I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to be able to do it completely justice and kind of by fact and by complete kind of verbatim reading, but it's that case of if you say, for example, have debt with a company, and you are amongst thousands of people who may have debt with that same company, and you can't shift it, or the company can't collect on, is finding trouble to collect on that debt, what they may do to cover their losses somewhat is sell that information about all the people who have debt for pennies on the dollar. They'll sell it to someone who has bought that Excel spreadsheet at some point, and then those people have the debt, and then they can collect on the debt, and those people could be private bounty hunters who go, right, I'm going to intimidate you, I'm going to call you and go, right, do you want your legs broken in? Or are you that aggressive? They go, do you want your legs broken in, or are you going to pay us the money?
It's crazy. It's numbers, crazy. It's data.
Yeah,
it's not real.
No, it's intangibles.
Yeah, people have the right, well, I suppose not have the right to break your legs, but we give that meaning. Yeah. So then that has value then, and that's quite scary. It's like, I suppose like with, maybe arguably, like with as we were talking about the footage and the decay of time, the value of money and currency and how our whole system works is it's just as vulnerable as the footage that we hoard.
Yeah. These constructs that we place up could be toppled by the simplest amount.
Quite easily.
Yeah, I think it's the question of who's in control of protecting it, and
whose morals dictate.
Yeah, whose principles, whose ethics, and that can be said for any new technology as well. What are the ethics behind the decisions that are being made to create? And it's a question of who's in control of being able to protect and keep this archive footage and this stuff in place. Because, I was using the VHDVC. That, to me, that was data. That was information. That was, and I was an objective viewpoint to that archive footage because I have no personal connection to it, apart from personal connection for my own art. But to the people who donated it, that is absolutely precious. So if I go to another example, what I do as a kind of side thing is when I've got the time is I digitize Super 8 footage. So people, if you go on eBay, it's just lists and lists. People sell old home movies because, and we go back to the idea of technology in the archives, because they have no way of playing the film anymore, no way of putting the Super 8 film through a projection and seeing what's on it, because that technology in the eyes of current culture has subsided. No one uses it. I use it because I'm trained in film, I'm trained in Super 8, I'm trained in 16mm from my undergraduate and from my masters as well. So I'll put bids on these home movies, but I'll message these people and say, look, I'm an artist, I'd like to be able to use this footage for my own means. Are you okay with that? Do you know what's on the reel? Are you okay with me distributing? So have that conversation, because they might be selling it to downsize, they might be selling it to get rid of it, but I imagine there is still some connection to it. I bought one years ago and it had the word Bellevue on it, and I asked my mother, I was like, do you know what this word means? And she thought it might have been that apparently there was a zoo in Manchester called Bellevue Zoo, and I thought, okay, so it's going to be animals. Put it through my projector. It was Mount Rushmore in the 1960s.
Wow.
Because I knew it was the 60s because it had 60s on the pack. And it was Mount Rushmore, and then this woman getting out of her Cadillac at home, and it had on the front door in like an A0 piece of cardboard that it was said, "Dear Mrs. Gloss, sorry we have missed you, the phone company." And it was these people coming home, and then it was them going to a picnic in a park. And through research and through being able to find, kind of just being able to use the internet, Bellevue is a place in Ohio near a place called Blue Ash. And through Facebook, through the power of social media, again, I'm using this to my own positive means, I found the family of the people in the film.
Wow.
And so I managed to send them a digital copy of footage of as a conversation.
They had sold or lost
we don't know as a connection to this family and me how I've managed to come across this. It could have been that someone else who filmed it sold it, or it could have been passed on. I mean, the journey is, I'd say it's not important, but it is because it ended up at me. But that time there, I don't know how it got to me. It's like the Antiques Roadshow. Sometimes I don't know how this piece of art or this piece of curio came to me, but I don't know how this film came to me through one of the eBay lots. So I digitized it and I sent them a USB of footage of their mother they had never known existed or seen before.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that there's a person, then I have then my personal connection to that film, completely different to whoever sold it, in the same way that these people that have donated material to the archives, they have a personal connection to it. And I think there is a duty of care as an artist using this material for my own means to be as considerate as possible with it. And it's why when I do the Super 8 things, I speak to the people, because with some footage, I've painted on it, I've poured it in vodka, I've put bleach and window lean and laundry detergent on it, and I am, like you were saying before about the decay, I am actively decaying the original, but I will, as part of my practice, I will make a digital copy, because it's like if you set fire to an old 35mm print negative, that's decay, that's damage, that's gone.
Yeah.
You can't unerase that. You can't bring that out of the recycle bin. I will make a digital copy for posterity in the same way that maybe that the archive will have DVDs of digital footage of copies. So I think one of the DVDs was that I looked at but I didn't use it, but it was the Springfield Brewery. Now the Springfield Brewery in Wolverhampton burnt down the early part of this millennium, but someone had gone in 1997 and filmed it. Now 97,
like a walkthrough.
Yeah, kind of. I think they were just kind of walking through. It looked like they were walking around the factory gates, and they were walking around kind of like the forecourt, and they were just filming. Now 97, that could have been a VHS or a Super VHS, or it could have been a DV camera. But that version of that footage has been digitized onto a DVD. Yeah, we have a DVD of that. And thanks to kind of back compatibility, that will still work on a Blu-ray player. That will still play on a Blu-ray player. So we have that built-in future-proofing in sight with this medium. So there has been some digitizing, and I think as a practicing artist that is interested in time, interested in memory, interested in kind of conservation, seeing that is really important. It is really good, really precious that it can be existing. So yeah, that's part of what I do. And it's I think as someone involved in that, I think when someone hands you something to conserve or something to use, I think it is that respect because you're essentially using someone's past to your own means, and it's the same way that data may be used. Yeah. People may use data of you in a perverse manner.
But like with me, it's like once something's on the internet, that's out there. Yeah. Like that, even if you delete something, that's still somewhere. It's maybe more safe than a VHS or the Super 8 that just gets passed around eBay. Yeah. But in the same concept, it's there. It's there. And I get that's. It's almost like once it's out there, once it's shot, that's almost impossible.
But it's like it does become a part of you.
Becomes part of the society. It's you've captured a memory, and you almost give it out to the world without knowing. That's you don't know what someone might use that for, and that's what's interesting.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's by the same. It's by that same margin where what you put out there essentially does become simultaneously separate and connected to the original experience. So if I'm going to use a very blunt example, that girl who was on Dr. Phil, how about that? Cash Me Outside. that one. So how about that? She is the kind of those without a tangible physical connection to her will know her as that, but the more pieces that we see of her or have seen of her, or for those people who have that relationship in a physical manner, physical format to her, that's still become part of her. She has parts, to the super objective, the ones who are thousands of miles away, like you and me, she is the Cash Me Outside girl. But to those that know her, she is this girl and the Cash Me Outside her. It becomes part of you, whether you like it or not, in a kind of way. And I think that, again, we go back to the power of data, we go back to the power of the internet, that it becomes part of you whether you like it or not, in a kind of very pervasive manner. And I think that's again, it's the question of ethics. It's how responsible is one person going to be, or how responsible are you going to be on the internet today?
Well, I think so. I was having a conversation about this same sort of topic the other day. It's the same. Well, it is. It's the same as freedom of speech. And in my view, if freedom of speech is essential in the world, for the reason that yes, they're horrible people that have horrible thoughts.
Yeah.
But if you don't hear those, if you don't see the bad, you can't learn what is good.
Yeah, it's
So that's what I meant by we are growing together, because we're looking at something. Someone has done something, maybe for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And we say we don't like that. So then it's up to us to decide what is good and what is bad. But without seeing the bad, then anything is almost...
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of links back to one of the interviewees that I had for the piece. So I interviewed Rob Maris, ex-MP for Wolverhampton, for this very he gave me a very powerful 6-minute answer. So with all the interviewees, I asked the what could be considered simple question of what is your Wolverhampton? Now that is, I designed it as an open response question because it gives space for the answer to be as broad or as narrow as possible. I didn't want to hem in the people that I interviewed for the piece.
Like with Heterotopia, it is someone's subjective
Yeah,
response.
absolutely. And he spoke about a speech that the MP Enoch Powell gave called the Rivers of Blood. It's now known as the Rivers of Blood speech. And I did minimal. I will admit I did minimal reading on the Rivers of Blood purely because I knew that I wasn't going to use that part of his interview for it. But when he gave it, I had a piqued curiosity to go and have a read of what it was about. And he was speaking about a kind of an influx of minority communities coming into Wolverhampton and becoming the dominant population, and the fact that there would be riots in the streets because of this. And
people are scared of change.
Yeah, and Rob and Mr. Maris gave the answer that the people of Wolverhampton from both sides of the communities said, that man is not us. That man does not share the opinion of the people within this place. And it's like you said, it's like, as an MP, he has a platform to say he had a platform to say these things. As free speech dictates, he can be able to say these things. But it's like you said, it's that response to say, no, we as a collective, we as a society do not agree with that.
Yeah.
And you can go back to thinking it's the power of the internet. You have a much larger platform to reach a international now audience, to reach the people that you want.
Yeah,
you do. And then that can go back to what we were saying earlier about the amount of content out there versus the amount of time and what you choose to consume within this almost behemoth of content out there. It's become a
drowning in knowledge, starved of facts.
Yeah, it's drowning in information.
That was drowning in information, starved of knowledge.
Yeah, not necessarily drowning. It'd be wonderful if we was drowning in knowledge, because at least it'd feel like you're learning something, for whether that's good or bad. But it's data, it's information. It's drowning in this. It's like King Canute, the tidal wave. It is like just this absolute flood of data that is out there.
This whole project as a whole, I know the inspiration came from the writings that you were talking about, Heterotopia.
Yeah.
But there's two sides to it, I guess. It's the artistic response.
Yeah.
But the goal is that once this project's completed, that there's going to be a body of research that the artists have created themselves as a response to the space.
Yeah.
Because I think the main focus is things need to be done, things need to change. Why it's a question why are places empty? Why are there so many empty buildings? Why are people not allowed to really be as involved with the place they live as they used to be?
Yeah, so kind of that was the kind of tail end of I kind of posed myself 3 questions based on the reading. So with these heterochronic spaces that collect and absorb time, my idea was, okay, you've got these within the confines of a museum, within the confines of an art gallery, you have treasures, you have collections, you have pieces of work that have been curated and have been stored and hoarded by a group of people that are in charge. The curators and the staff of museums and libraries are in charge in some capacity of going, I decide that that's precious, I decide that that needs to be pulled away from the limelight, I decide that this is no longer interesting, so we'll move this to another space. So the idea was, can those boundaries within that space of a museum, can we expand those boundaries to a city? Now, Wolverhampton itself, and this leads nicely on from Jane's January exhibition. She spoke about the ring road. In the case of the ring road itself, is a boundary
and how it cut off the lifeline essentially.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a case of, can we expand the boundaries of these heterochronic spaces? Can we apply this boundary to the city? And when I say the city, I mean any city space. I don't mean like London City, or I don't mean a specific place. I mean just the city. So the idea is, there are people in charge of these spaces, council, politicians, and business. There are factors and groups of people that are in charge of curating these spaces and saying, this building has value, we'll curate this, we'll look after this. And it could well be that this building next to it does not. And this one we're going to knock down and put something else there. So then it's that question of, who is in charge of that? And how can the people who use these spaces every day and have everything changing around them and creating that strange yet familiar feeling, how can they get involved and have a say on how the spaces get curated? Now, we have town hall meetings, we have council forums, we have notifications where council put notices on pillar boxes or lampposts, is the case in my hometown, where they announce that things are going to happen. But I was saying to some of the members of the public who came to look at the piece on Friday, we almost could get into a point where it's a little bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where this notification is very much hidden away from public eye, and it's only really the people who are watching every single day what is happening and going, right, I object to this. So it's that question of, how do we involve more people every single day?
Yeah, I guess that's the most important part about it though, isn't it? It's because people live in a space that is their home, but they have no control over anything. So it's no wonder the high street is dead, because people aren't involved in the conversation. People can shop. Like, we've been encouraged for convenience, and now the high street's dead. And I think what would be the best thing to come out of this would be, we'd find something, because no one really asks what do the people want in their towns.
No.
Because it's not like we can just leave the space dead.
No.
People still want to get out. Be
around. How do we?
What is the next step? Like, so now that it's quite clear that the American system of the shopping malls is not working anymore.
No.
What is there left? So opening the space up to artists is one. So here, just by letting artists into a space that was empty for 30, 40 plus years, it's just it's the question of what can be done. Like, interesting things are allowed to happen if you just open a space up to people. Yeah,
it is. I mean, we see. In my home in Stourbridge, there is a kind of revamp for restaurants. So it feels like in the last couple of years, a lot of eateries and a lot of places have opened. Some have remained longer than others, but it's that question of, there was one that closed recently after a 12-month period, and there is one that is kind of closed down and reopening in another kind of way. There is one on the old Swinford Cross at Curry House, I think, it's reopened 4 times in as many years. I don't know why. But I think in terms of how to progress forward and how to model it forward, if you're opening up these spaces and at least some things are happening and these spaces are being used by people to do things, I think that's really positive.
It's the only way I can see things being done.
I think it would be interesting. Again, we go to the question of then who controls those little spaces within that larger tapestry, but to be able to have these, if business owners and if property developers and people had these things and gone, right, we have this space, it is a white canvas, you can pay a 12-month rent on it, it is yours for a year. There you go.
Yeah.
And we have that space, we as a collective, as artists, as business people, as creators, as people involved in the community want to provide something for a year. Let's go by that 12 months, go by a calendar year. Then that person moves on, someone else moves in. Then that person moves on, someone else is in. It's not those fixed institutions of shopping malls that are. I mean, Merry Hill is 30 years down the line now, I believe. I think it was 1989, 1988, kind of when it opened. But we have these spaces where they keep shifting and they keep moving, and then those are contrasted and put against the things that are fixed and remain. The churches, the town, the council building that's absolutely massive. We have these spaces, and then that in itself is a strange yet familiar space, and we are choosing to curate our spaces in the same way that art galleries and museums may be curated, where the absolute institutional pivotal pieces remain, but then new collections and new pieces of work move in and move out.
Yeah.
There could be some kind of parallel within that.
Yeah. The pieces being more so the people moving in and moving out.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there is that. It's. I mean, it's something I wrote in part of the treatment. The museums and the archives and the galleries, the objects within them are locked away from the ravages of time, but those spaces are ultimately open to time, because if they weren't open to the ebb and flow of time, people would not go in them. You'd have a locked box otherwise. So time still flows through those spaces to allow new members of the public, new people, new audiences. Time does flow into those spaces to allow the experience of the citizens of the people in those spaces to then come in and go out every single day. Time does exist in a fractional manner, and it'd be that same way where it would be larger in the city spaces, where the ebb and flow of people move around these spaces that are fixed that are being curated in a sense.
So do you think once we've done all the artists as part of the Arts Council funding, do you think that the research will be of benefit? Do you think it will make a difference?
I think the research will be of importance. I think we go back to the discussion we were having earlier about the internet. I think it is a very important thing that it is tangible. I mean, I think it is important that it is printed. It is important that it is put in the hands of people with an email, with an internet. You can just go and click it off. It's important that it prints and it exists as a thing, as an object that can be, again, it can be curated, it can be put in the archives and protected, but it is an important body that needs to be printed and put in the hands and discussed with the right people. In a town hall situation, in a meeting situation, so that this research can be discussed and debated and and seen and held as a focal point for a meeting. I think that's really important.
Because the alternative would be you brush it under the carpet and you carry on killing the location.
Yeah, well, the location kills itself by decay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
no.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's the place wants itself to decay, but we are trying to keep it alive. Like in the same way we hold on to footage.
Yeah.
That is essentially dead, but we keep it alive by just treasuring it.
Yeah, it's dead and unusable in your eyes. To go back to the archive argument, it's dead and unusable or not worth a value to someone, but to others it may be.
So that these conversations can happen. And
absolutely. Yeah, no, totally. It's again, I go back to kind of guilty pleasure. I love the TV show American Pickers on Dave. I love that show because I think there's you see emotion when these two guys rock up at these people's hoards of objects that they've just collected, and these men, those two guys see and go, right, that's valuable to us. We give that value, and when they say things like, this needs to be in a museum, this needs to be in the hands of someone, we're going to give this to someone, because the guys say, the guys say this needs to find a right place to exist. It's that love, it's that care and restore, and the same thing could be said about these city spaces. We want to give these spaces within the larger tapestry of the city the right care and the right love, because we see value in these spaces. And it may not be that the people in control, and I say importantly, the people who are in control may not see them as value, but it's important that other people as many people as possible are put into, or they insert themselves into the conversation and say, I see value in that. In this dog-eared, rough as all balls space that's got no roof, I see value in this.
Yeah.
It's like property development. It's like when you see I don't see some guy might not be like, right, I'm putting this house on auction because I don't see the value in it. Someone comes along and says, I see the potential value in this. I want to restore it. And these empty shop spaces, these little residential spaces, these things I see spaces like in the news. I think the other day that there's like I don't know where it is in the UK, but it's like there's a shop front there and there's a shop front there, and then between them there is this kind of overhang of space that connects them, so it creates the archway to go between two houses. It's 12 foot squared. Some young lads bought it for £1. A 12-foot square box with no access. You can only get to it through one of the buildings. It's £1. He saw value in that, and it's a window and it's a box. Lord knows what he's going to do with it because it's £1, but it'd be interesting to see that little bit of corner of that city or of that town being used, and it's by the same token that there might be a collection of people, there should be, it's that community drive to go, right, we see value in this shop, we see value in this property. How can we use this property? How can we get ourselves involved in the use of this property to say, we want this for a certain amount of time, we will show the city what we can do with this space. And bring people together to care about this space and go, right, this is how we're doing this. And it's done. There's a bar in Stourbridge that people have done that, and there is a community. The bar has passed from one owner to another, but that care, that love, that community spirit has still run its way through like a river, and there is still that care, and the same can be applied to countless spaces within Wolverhampton as a city, absolutely. And that research, I think this research will be able to show that. Certainly Jane's in terms of the Ring Road, and certainly in terms of how that space could be negotiated. And I think hopefully when people see my work in June in the main gallery, when people come see it this week in the gallery down Clifton Street, and maybe in Wolves Arts Fest, is that question of getting that point out there and saying you use these spaces, let's improve them.
So if you could do it again, the project, would you do anything differently?
I think it was purely a time thing, so I didn't get to really stretch into the kaleidoscopic elements of this. I mean, I did in a way that was via digital means of capture, but I was unable to utilise my Super 8 processing methods, because Super 8, the processing from the past 2 pieces of work I've done, it took about 5 weeks for the footage to come back, and for me to, in terms of film, send away, come back processed, paint on it, cut it up, put it back together, digitise, edit. It's about a 5-week turnaround, so 4-week residency, it wasn't going to happen. So I had to make that judgment call. If I had the time, if my residency were longer, or if I had front-loaded my residency, and I could have filmed Super 8, but I felt it was better to do digital capture because the archival footage was of a different medium. There was some standard 8 Super 8 material in there. So I think if I'd have used the Super 8 filming, the compare and contrasting wouldn't have been as strong. I think it's important that when it's viewed, you can see the differences between the digital footage and the non-digital footage that I've taken from the archives for this use. So if I'd have used my own Super 8, I mean, I could have done, but if I'd have used my own Super 8, the message would not have been as clear. It wouldn't have been as tight.
So all you would have really changed would be the medium slightly.
Yeah.
And how you responded with the medium.
Yeah, probably. I think there was some sound issues, but that was down to how I was editing. I think I've ended up with about 30 gigabytes of footage, and my poor Mac laptop was taking a hell of a beating. And I was editing, and I've taught so many people not to do this, but I had to do it for the sake of my Mac. I was running out of RAM space. I was editing straight from the USB, and it was latency. There was just so many latency issues when I was on the editing software. Like I'd skip forward a minute, and the video wouldn't load. So there was some technical issues, but I was very fastidious in terms of waiting and patiently checking it over. But again, I mean, I say this now as we are now 2-3 days after the unveiling. You know, this is Monday. We unveiled on the 21st. We were 50-60 people in a very cramped space, and there was a lot of conversation. Brilliant. I really love that, and there was a lot of debate and discussion. But the dialogue, the interviews, some of the stuff was drowned out, and I was standing there reflecting upon it, thinking, did I really need audio? But then I'm thinking ahead to the exhibition in June in the main gallery. I'm thinking ahead to Arts Fest if it gets picked up. The audio may be lifted in the environment space, and again, it's the question of what we go back to earlier, and I was saying about how we use spaces within the space. How do we use these spaces within our locale? The piece may look and sound entirely different in these spaces, so it'll be I won't know it until it's in the space. So I won't know if I'd have done something differently until I've experienced it in May and June. So the only thing really was the Super 8.
Maybe I'll get a chance to ask you in May or June.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a film, I think a video with I think all five of us and the other 7 or 8 artists that are contributing to the big show. I think it'll be interesting to see when it's all pulled together. I think I'm very excited to see. I mean, I spoke to David, who's the next artist. I spoke to him on Friday night, and some of the stuff he's doing, I think, will look very interesting in the mini space, and I think it will look very interesting in the big space in the gallery. In terms of his machinations of sculpture and light, I think that'll be very powerful. And Sajan's video, I'm interested to see, because both of us are dealing with the format and the medium of video. Having Sajan's response to it via video, I'm looking forward to seeing what the differences are, what he's willing to put together and wanting to put together. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got one more question for you before we wrap this up.
No worries.
What is your Wolverhampton?
My Wolverhampton is one of vibrancy. I think there is a lot of vibrancy here, and this is going from experiencing the residency, experiencing the unveiling on Friday, and experiencing our filming and walking around what feels like an age ago, but it was only really 2 weeks ago. It feels like there is a strong, vibrant community here. It really does. And you know, I go to my hometown, Stourbridge, my other places in the Black Country, in the Midlands, and Worcestershire that I go to. It is a city that feels, and a space that feels like kind of no other. There is a rarity of the passion here, and I think that's really positive. And I think if that passion can be channeled correctly, and like some of the other artists have said, I'm excited to see the potential of what could come out of the next so many years coming up in Wolverhampton. Just need that to be channeled properly.
That's a really good answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this conversation.
No problem.
Should we shake hands or something to keep
Pleasure.
Pleasure.